Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica HUCKABAY, like she mentioned, and I'm with the Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center. We're the TBI, Traumatic Brain Injury Center of Excellence for the Defense Health Agency and the Department of Defense. So we partner with the veterans hospitals throughout the nation. And so I'm the regional education coordinator that does a lot of the outreach and education for both military service members, providers, and the VA systems. So I've been with the company about three and a half years, and I'm really happy to be here to speak with you and to hear from our panelists about their experience with traumatic brain injury and their military service. So just wanted to make a note that I work for Palo Alto Veterans Institute of Research, and I'm not an employee of the VA. I'm a contractor to the Department of Defense. All right, so let's get started with our first question. All right, so thank you, Emilio and Frank, both of you, for being here today and for providing your insights. We really appreciate hearing about your experience. And do either of you have personal or professional experience with concussion or traumatic brain injury as a result of your military experience that you'd like to share? And we could start with Frank.
Oh, hi, my name is Frank Martinez. Thanks for having me today. I served in the military back in 2005 was when I re-enlisted at 38 years old. And I did 2 deployments in Iraq in 2005 and 2009 and 2010. So I actually did 2 deployments. My first deployment was a year and a half. It was the last rotation of a long deployment. During that deployment, I went through 5 IED strikes. And at that time, what they call is getting your bell rung at that time. And during that time, a lot of soldiers and myself didn't self-report at that time because you didn't want to be taken off the line, because it was more like a punishment, more you'd be cleaning weapons or doing different things when they take you off the line. So a lot of the guys didn't want to go off the line. They wanted to continue to go on the mission. So they did not self-report those injuries. Not till later, coming home, do we report. And it's a little bit more difficult to be diagnosed with a TBI because some guys come back with PTSD also as well. So the TBI and the PTSD, there are similar symptoms, fatigue and sleep problems and trouble with the memory and depression and anxiety and irritability. And that also goes with PTSD. So sometimes you're diagnosed with one and not the other. And later on, I was diagnosed after some time, after pushing that issue of wanting to be diagnosed and going through the 12-hour battery of tests to validate that.
Yeah, no, what you said is very important. People don't usually self-report when they're in the battlefield. They don't want to be taken away from their, the people they're serving with. They feel like they're letting the team down. I've heard that reported from many service members. So you're not alone in that experience. And we like to have people report a traumatic brain injury incident right away because it's so hard to diagnose after the fact and many years later after you get back. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. And how are you doing now after being diagnosed?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I suffered a stroke after when I got out of the military. I had eye problems. I continue to have floaters. Unfortunately, in June of this year, I was involved in a head-on collision. So
Oh,
I kind of like gone backwards, it seems like sometimes. But
yeah.
now I'm having to recognize that again. And this time around, it's a little easier to cope with. And being on the civilian side, I'm here and I'm able to reach out to people that I know. I'm not on the line. And I can take time off of work and take care of myself.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I'm sorry to hear about your collision recently. Yeah, that can be challenging. Well, thank you so much, Frank. I want to move on to Emilio and get your feedback on that question.
Sure. Thank you again for having us today. Appreciate the opportunity. My traumatic brain injury stems from an IED incident in 2008, September 5th. I was driving on a mounted patrol, and I drove over an IED, and it pretty much like blew our Hummer in half. But so I guess you could say fortunate, unfortunate. I had to leave Iraq right away because I had a fractured right fibula. It wasn't a compound fracture, so they had to cut my leg open from my knee to my ankle. And so right away I had to leave from being in country. And so that, like I said, was fortunate to draw a lot of attention to what I was experiencing. And so just coming back home, you don't know what these things are, what's bothering you, what these ailments are. So I struggled for a long time sometimes we still do, but as a single father, my kids were about 8 and 12 at the time. And so, still trying to do that and find some regularity in my life. But then also understanding finally that through Polytrauma Network, Apollo Alto VA, and other therapies that, you try to downplay, because I flew back from Iraq to the United States, Germany, the United States, with a few other people that had IEDs happen on the same day in and around our base, different cities. But so I saw on our medevac, not the chopper, but the plane on the way home, like a gentleman who was all burned up and his body was kind of mangled, and he had his own in-flight doctor. And it was really like a solemn situation flying back to the country. It was like a dead, quiet flight. There's a lot of people on it, and so I felt fortunate where I could, if I needed to go use the restroom, for instance, on the plane, I could hobble to the restroom, but someone else, there was a few people on there that were much more affected immediately. And so immediately you downplay, like, I'm not that, so I don't really have anything wrong with me, in a sense, like kind of self-diagnose. And so, I learned through just different therapies, specifically some stuff at the Polytrauma Network, is to give your experience validation. And so to understand that what you experience, even though in the military context, it might be somewhat common, but in the population of the country or the world, like, it's very specific and very small, the percentage that experience those explosions and stuff like that, and those close contact situations. And so understanding that as there's validation was kind of a step for me to understanding, okay, I need to really try to process what is ailing me, what my hangups are, and then properly address them, And it didn't happen overnight. It definitely was a number of years, and you still find yourself falling back on that, of course.
Yeah, and what you said is really important. I've seen a lot of other service members and veterans do the same thing, where, what happened to me wasn't as bad as this guy next to me, who, may have been blown up and lost, limbs, or been worse off in some way. But that's really good that the Palo Alto VA was able to coach you on and validating your experience. That's really good. And how are you doing these days with?
Better. I went back to school. I met Frank at San Jose State. That's how I know Dr. Claw. And so, like, my college experience, it took a long time. it took me a couple of years maybe to understand, like I was really go to school and leave because I didn't want to associate with anyone. And then I found out years later that there was things on campus that help you, you know, like I forgot the name of the office on campus, but you can, the people with disabilities, different disabilities.
Disability Resource Center.
Yeah, so, you know, getting 3 hours to take a test instead of 2, someone to help you take notes. But it took me a while to understand, like, to even ask for help, because I say this a lot when I speak with Dr. Claus' platform she provides for us, that in the military sense, a lot of times, even asking for help is a confrontation, or you don't want to seem like Frank said, you don't want to seem like you're not capable of your job. So you just kind of pocket that stuff a lot. And so it took me a while to learn, 1, to ask for help, and then 2, to accept that help, and then to understand, like, this isn't a dangerous environment. But at the same time, I didn't know that I was having comprehension issues, reading and retaining, like reading a page over and over and over again. But I was trying to figure that out on my own without the help. And even with the help, it still took a while. So then I graduated last year, and now I'm in a Master's of Fine Arts program at California College of the Arts, because I fell in love again with the arts, this time with writing instead of painting and drawing. And so I found something constructive in that through therapy, like overexposure therapies and writing therapies at VA, Palo Alto, and San Jose. And so I kind of pursued that as something to do productively. So that's kind of where I still am. So.
Wonderful. Now, do either of you have any advice for people that may be newly diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury and they're trying to figure things out, and where do they turn to after that?
Go ahead, Frank.
You want to start with Frank?
Oh, start with me. Well, you know, I'm a rec therapist at the VA at Palo Alto. And the reason I became a rec therapist is because I wanted to work with veterans that were coming home and who had problems. And I can relate to these guys, and I can really speak firsthand that how the importance of they always tell us the old way of the concept is suck it up and drive on, but now it's suck it up and talk to somebody, and really reach out to somebody and have somebody to talk to who's been there and who can coach you and give you the resources that you need to follow up with your care. A lot of times guys get frustrated because they have to wait for an appointment or have to wait for certain things. And especially during this time of the COVID, everything is on FaceTime, everything is on Zoom, everything is on at distance. So it's even more challenging for the veterans now. But I always tell the guys, there's a resource for you. There is somebody there to help you. You just have to reach out. And a lot of guys the hardest part is to swallow your pride and ask for help. Because we're tough guys. We went through tough training, and we're used to driving on. But we're not used to asking for help. And we're used to being with a team. And so I always tell the guys, you need to find a new team that's going to rally around you and get you through what you're going through now. And you need to recognize that you have a problem and you need to address it. And that's the hardest part, is realizing that you have a problem. And, finding that mentor, and the resources at San Jose State really helped me. Dr. Lena Claw, I didn't know those resources existed at San Jose State until my last semester at San Jose State, my senior year. And it really, really helped me break out of my shell and help me through college, actually, to get through. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Do not reach out to somebody.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. And EMILIO, what are your tips for recovery after traumatic brain injury?
I guess I'll kind of jump on what Frank just ended with. I didn't even understand what traumatic brain injury was until I was finally diagnosed. Like I said, I was fortunate because I had such a massive incident, the IED explosion in my leg. So I was getting a lot of, like, not catered to, but a lot of attention in that aspect for people that don't really have that dominant situation to push them to that. They might kind of push it aside. But I didn't even know what traumatic brain injury was. And then I got diagnosed with a minor traumatic brain injury, but my PTSD was heavy. So those two together was making me have elevated issues. And I would really harp on the fact that once you get diagnosed with something like that, like it's okay to go back and check it out again. Like you can get diagnosed in 2010 and then that's your only diagnosis. Like you have to check yourself out again. And the thing that's hard about sometimes work with the VA is like we as vets don't have through the VA like a primary care physician that knows us, that knows me, that knows like, oh, how's your son doing? How was last week his game? Like you don't know that personalization, but you get the treatment, but they don't know you personally. So like I've had bad instances with therapists, bad instances with medication, and the person that knows me the best is me. So like coming to that point where you make the decision of I don't want to take this anymore, I need to try something new, this isn't working. Whereas someone who doesn't really know you might be like, well, maybe just try a little longer, or maybe, you know, like I said, a couple therapists I met right away, I knew this wasn't going to work out, and so I switched therapists, and that kind of, you take steps back when you're trying to take steps forward. But you know, reassessing yourself, and like I didn't know years later after my TBI, I was having a lot of side effects and issues still. Like I had alopecia and like really anxiety and stuff here and there. Like there would be circles of hair missing my face and in my head. And so I went back because I didn't know. I said, will TBI increase later on? Is that how it works? And they said, no, that your TBI is your diagnosis, but what's changing is the PTSD, which is affecting that. And so like, I didn't know that, you know, so it's just a lot of things that revolve around, you're going to understand yourself more than anyone else will. But you need to understand also, like Frank said, when you're failing, you can't just always push forward and think about, I can take care of this, I can handle this on my own. Like one, asking for help is a big deal, but recognizing help is a greatly effective deal to yourself as well. Just understanding that. And also, like I said, knowing that just because 10 years ago you were here, doesn't mean you're always going up. You can go up and down, but it's okay to reassess yourself or take a look at yourself again, because like I was within 2 arms length of a really crazy explosion. Like, I don't know how that's going to affect me. The waves that went through my body and my brain and all that, like, I don't know how that's going to affect me 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. So it's okay to try to check yourself out again and not just rely on this initial diagnosis so long ago, because we all changed, good and bad. And so you need to, you know, and like I said, you know yourself the best, you know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And, you know, it's hard for us, I've found, to have that personalization in like care. We get it and it's consistent and it's came a long way. I know Frank can attest, but from when I first got into the system in 08, 09, things have really progressed as far as I think. But you know, the personalization aspect can't completely be there because it's such a large number of people, you know.
Yeah, that's really good. What you mentioned about advocating for yourself and finding, you know, because you do change providers within, I think there's a lot of residents that are going through the VA system is what I heard. And you have to advocate for yourself is what you're saying. And really just, you know, maybe having mentors at San Jose State with Vet Connect and, you know, the different resources that are there, making sure that you're in touch with those things are important. And you mentioned that that things have gotten a lot better. And that's also what I've heard from veterans that are in the VA system, that things have, you know, improved remarkably since that time. I see from our worldwide numbers of traumatic brain injury, the peak was in around that time when you had your traumatic brain injury. I think it was 2009 to 2011 was the highest number of brain injuries in the world at that time for service members. So thank you both for sharing that information about what your experience has been with a traumatic brain injury as a result of your military service. Now, I wanted to talk to you about our next question, which was, what was your experience in getting your education and working with other veterans? And what have they shown you about the ways in which war affects the brain in different ways, maybe TBI, PTSD, any other ways that the war affects the brain?
You know, going back to school was a challenge, but it was also a gift, because one of the main things that you have to do when you come back is you have to get back on a schedule and a routine. I really didn't want to go back to school, but I wanted to take an avenue to get back in a routine of doing something. And as I got back in a routine, it became easier for me. Again, going to school, we were alone. I went to school, like Emilio said, you go to school and you leave. You don't socialize, you don't do anything. And towards the end of the semester, I started working with Dr. Elena Claw and getting the Vet Connect and the peer leaders and doing other groups with other veterans. And it really helped to be around guys that have that camaraderie back. And you really don't have to ask those questions to those guys. They already know. Y'all been in service together and all that, and just regressing on your past service and silly things you did and everything. It kind of it gets you back in the routine, and it really helps you have some normalcy in your life. A lot of guys go back on multiple deployments because they can't cope in the civilian world because it's too hard, because your brain is on high speed, and when you come here, everything slows down and you're still on high speed. So a lot of guys itch to go back, and they feel normal again when they go back over there, not knowing they're still going to have to face at some time the civilian world and reintegrate to the community and get back. But the biggest thing for me was to get back to other veterans that were in that place that I was, sitting in the back of the class, not answering questions, just going to school, not socializing. If they had a place to go, it was much easier for them to be together as a group. And then later, guys would open up and talk about their service, and then ask for advice or ask for different things. And that was the most fulfilling, and that was most helpful for me. It's not only it was therapy for me, but it was also therapy for the guys also. And continuing that, and that's why I became, and when I came to the VA, I wanted to continue that, to give the same to the veterans that came prior to me in the Vietnam War, Korean War, World War II, the veterans that I've served here. And it really helps them, and it's refreshing to them that I don't have to ask them questions. We could just talk as brothers.
Yeah, very, very good. And you mentioned, finding that place like Vet Connect is really important. Finding your home basically with your people that you associate with and that you can identify with is really important. And I've heard that as well, that people go back into more tours of duty because they're used to that mindset, and it's really hard to acclimate to the environment when they come home. So that's very important what you said there. Now, you mentioned a place for that you found like where you belonged and where you really enjoyed working with veterans. Now, is there a place for women veterans to like get together, or is it all intermixed with men and women?
Oh, it's all intermixed, but you
Okay.
know, you're still finding that women are still not self-reporting also.
Yeah.
They're slowly starting to come in the system, and now we're seeing the older veterans, the veterans that served in Vietnam and different services now, they are starting to come into the system now. But it's taken this many years for them to be recognized. It's not for their service, but also to come forward, because they've had those same issues, and they've struggled with those same issues. And there is programs, women PTSD program in the Menlo Park. There's different outreach programs for the women. But again, it's the ability to come forward and ask for the help.
Okay, that's good. Good. Well put. Now, Emilio, what are your thoughts on working with veterans, and what's been your experience getting your education at San Jose State?
I've learned sometimes you have to receive like people and veterans where they are. You can't try to push like what you know on them, especially veterans, because they're not going to receive that too well. But once you get to know them and the barriers kind of break, it's easy to, for instance, like at San Jose State, just to have the room office to go into to like decompress if you're having a bad day, because it's a
Yeah.
very high stimulation place, like sounds, noises, people, a lot of young students and things that are, people are very different from you if you're like mentally and emotionally in one place. And so it's been great to have that grow on campus as well. And also like the things like this and Dr. Claude, the things she provides also provide a great, I always refer to it as bridge building, because you know the platforms we've used, the panels we've sat on, all of us would go speak to her class at different times. I have a buddy who's been a high school teacher for over 20 years. I spoke to his class a few times, like 4 or 5 times. When my kids were in high school, I spoke to their classes. And so it's just a lot of bridge building. Specifically, like I was talking to my daughter's school when she was in high school, just explaining more how writing has helped me, because I was further along in writing then. And a little bit about my experience, did a couple exercises with the big class of history students. And then after the class, this girl wanted to meet me. And then she ended up wanting to like give me a hug. And I guess her father was a Marine, and just me talking about like my experiences, she told me, like now I kind of understand him more.
Yeah.
So like these opportunities to share. And again, it's not trying to place our burden or have people take on our burdens, but we have more in common as people than we have in differences, you know? And so understanding that, even though our training and our experiences are vastly different from what everyone else experienced, at the end of the day, we're also like humans with emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
We want to belong, we want to feel necessary, we want to feel like we're contributing. And so all these platforms have always provided great opportunities for us to give back. Excuse me. And I always want to be an advocate for veterans, and also an advocate just for people, you know, to because we all, our writing group was called Veterans of Life. We changed it to invite other people to write. It's called Veterans of Life, right? Because, you know, we're all veterans of life, regardless of what we experience, separate from veterans and civilians, but we've all have experienced life, and life's hard and life sucks sometimes. And so understanding that there is help, it reduces what you have to carry every day. You know, like Frank mentioned a few times, we're used to throwing everything in our pack, putting it on and punching on and marching forward until your shins bleed. That's not even possible, but like it feels possible sometimes, you know? And so you need to understand that it's okay to take stuff out of what you're carrying. It's okay to like see someone else carrying a lot and help them for a little bit. And so, excuse me, these platforms always provide a great opportunity to build bridges and to share experiences and to just grow as a community. You know, that's what I appreciated about what Dr. Klopp provides for us, to give back to the students there, to strengthen the veteran community there, the VRC, and just build like stuff like this that we can just cross all these different intersections. Like I would never imagine I'd be here talking to this platform. And so these opportunities, I guess this is a small bit of a silver lining in this crazy pandemic situation, but we can talk to people we don't regularly talk to. I would probably never talk to you in my life, but this platform provided that. And so just kind of taking the goods with the bads and trying to focus more on the goods, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's really well put, because as a daughter of a Vietnam veteran with a severe brain injury, it's, you know, it's hard for me to understand what he went through. So people like you really help the children of veterans as well. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for that. And so is there other avenues that veterans can take if they want to get out of their own shell and start giving back? And how would they get involved in the type of work that you are involved with?
Is that for me or for Frank?
Oh, for either of you. For like having a platform to speak about their experiences or, yeah.
Go ahead, Frank, jump on it.
Well, I always advocate for guys to go back. You know, a lot of guys come back with benefits that they don't use on education. And I always advocate for the guys. I said, hey, I was 42 years old when I went back to college. And I said, if I can do it, you can do it. And the encouragement, I had a friend, he was a lieutenant colonel. He was the one that actually got me to re-enlist at 38 years old. And after I got back from Iraq, he encouraged me to go to school. And I didn't want to go back, but he encouraged me. And I ended up going back, and I ended up liking it. And I ended up getting in a routine. It really, really helped me. And I always do that. Talk to the guys about going to school. It's the most important thing, not only to fulfill your life, but also give you an avenue and get you on a routine. And you know, if you're not going back to the military, if you're not going back to wanting to be a police officer, because after guys come back from war, the avenue of wanting to become a police officer, that has changed, you know, because you know, you have to go through another course of training. And so I was a police officer, I was a deputy sheriff, and I didn't want to go back to that work. So that's why I had to switch my careers. And I knew I wanted to help veterans. And I stumbled on recreation therapy. And you have to find a passion that's going to be something for you. Like EMILIO said, you know, before it was art, then it became writing. So you have to find another avenue for yourself. Like I always tell guys, you need to get off the bar stool, get off the bottle, and don't self-medicate. Find other avenues. Take a run, take a jog, join a new group, find a new hobby. And that's the most difficult thing. How do you do those things? And I think going back to San Jose State really helped me. I was the student that sat in the back of the class, and I had 3 veterans come and talk in front of the class about their experience. And then they talked about, oh, I'm on this medication and this has happened to me and this is what happened to me. And they shared all their experiences. And when they did that, that really hit me home, because, you know, I felt what some of those guys were feeling and I didn't want to say anything, you know, and it really helped me break out of my shell and ask for help. And go on to those things. So you finding that second avenue for yourself is very important. And like I say, I stress education on the guys because they have those benefits when they come back, and it's often don't get used.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And, you know, having that great benefit is really important. Now, I want to move on to our next question here. So thank you for answering those questions so far. Well, actually, let me sum up and outline the common effects of deployment experiences on the brain. You know, from tinnitus, which is also a symptom of mild traumatic brain injury or brain injury in general, to, you know, overlapping symptoms like, you know, PTSD, that's an overlapping symptom as well. So is it possible to share my screen, Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and bring up a, so this is a sheet that is available on our website. So divbic.deco.mil. It's our signs and symptoms fact sheet. And it's really easy to understand. So here in the middle, you have all the different symptoms, both physical and cognitive and emotional symptoms of traumatic brain injury. So most of what we're seeing is physical in nature, but there is a lot of emotional and cognitive. So anxiety, which somebody mentioned, you know, not being able to concentrate sometimes, difficulty finding words. Those are more cognitive or thinking issues that can occur. It doesn't occur in every traumatic brain injury. It doesn't occur for every person that has a brain injury. But ringing in the ears, like tinnitus, is something that is one of the most common reasons that people get a disability rating at the Veterans Benefits Administration. So that's what I've heard. But these are all the different symptoms. So most of what we're seeing in the military right now, the #1 reason for traumatic brain injury is from a fall. And 80% of all brain injuries in the military are considered mild in nature. So just because it's considered mild doesn't mean that there's not symptoms that impacts daily life. So we really want to make sure that we get people checked out as soon as possible. So I know both of you have served, I think Frank, you served in 2005, you mentioned going
Correct.
back in. So in 2008, we started doing neurocognitive testing baseline for when people, before they deployed. And during the middle of their service, and then when they finish their service. So now we're able to better track and evaluate head injuries when they occur. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. But you know, I get a lot of questions from people about what is a traumatic brain injury. So we define it as a blow or jolt to the head that disrupts the normal function of the brain. So people think, well, I've had heat stroke. Does that mean I've had a brain injury? Yes, that's a brain injury, but it's not a traumatic brain injury. So if you had heat stroke and you fall and you hit your head, that's a traumatic brain injury. So, you know, same with loss of oxygen to the brain, or carbon dioxide poisoning or monoxide poisoning. So those are acquired brain injuries, but they're not a traumatic brain injury. Stroke is an acquired brain injury. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there, because that's a lot of what people ask me about that often. So this fact sheet is available for you to view anytime. It's on our website at divbic.deco.mil. So these are it even lists some of the problems that could happen after a brain injury. You know, what to do after you've had a brain injury. And most people recover fully from a brain injury. Recovery starts happening within a few hours to a few days. Some people take a few weeks to recover, other people take longer, but we do still expect people to recover from a traumatic brain injury. So it's really important to keep that in mind, that it's not a sentence for the rest of your life. People can recover, like Frank and Emilio, and move on to do great things. And, you know, and if you still have symptoms, you take care of them, but it's something that we expect you to recover from. Here's some of our tips for recovery. So making sure that you don't get another concussion while your brain is healing from the first is really important, since it could take longer to heal from the second traumatic brain injury. Decreasing those energy drinks. I know a lot of the service members I talk to are drinking a lot of energy drinks. So we try to taper off of those energy drinks and coffee to help them get better sleep, because the number one number two symptom, number one is headaches. So that's number one symptom after a brain injury. Number two is sleep issues. So we try to get the sleep issues under control first and foremost, and then that helps with every other symptom. So it helps with the headache, controlling those headaches, and dizziness and balance problems and other things that could happen based on the brain injury. And just remember, every person has different symptoms depending on who they are, what they're makeup of, you know, past, you know, trauma that they've had. It could, you know, where they got hit in the brain, on the brain. So if they had a frontal lobe, which is more common than other types of brain injury, that frontal lobe is, you know, affects personality and that type of thing. So every part of your brain has different functions. And I won't get into all those details in the interest of time, but every brain injury is different. So, all right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have questions so far? We're about halfway through, or we have about 15 minutes left, I should say. I'm sorry. And did Frank, I know you work at the VA in Palo Alto. Did you have anything to add to what I mentioned about traumatic brain injury and the signs and symptoms?
Yeah, you know what, the VA Palo Alto's got one of the best programs here in the polytrauma program. And you know, when you get your referrals, they start you right away and they get you evaluated. So and there's a lot of people that come from around the United States that come here for those specialties. And so we're very lucky for the veterans that come here, that they're able to get seen right away. And there's different disciplines in this facility on this campus, so which is great for the veterans that need that care.
Very good. Very good. And I know at the VA in Palo Alto, they also have a relationship. We have a relationship with the service members. So people come from Moffett Field, they get referred to the VA in Palo Alto. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's active duty soldiers that do come here, and then you have active duty liaisons that do work here also for the different branches. So when the service members do come, they're greeted by the active duty liaison.
Attention.
Very good.
Alert. Building 100.
All right, so I want to move on to our fourth question, or our fourth item on the agenda, which is, what do you know from either personal or professional experience about symptoms or effects of a brain injury in specific? You've mentioned some of these, we touched on them in our last questions, but is there anything you want to add to that? Frank, why don't you start, and then
Emilio, can you start? I got
Oh,
the
sure.
PA system.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of things that went along with it. Sleep, deprivation, suffering. A lot of it just revolves around putting yourself through more stress than you need to. I had, like I said, patches of like hair would fall out of my face or my head. For a long time, I only found like a happiness or a way to cope through like drinking or working out until this anxiety went away. And so I learned, like I said, that you need to reassess yourself consistently. And it's not just one thing that is going to happen to you. It's going to be a number of things. And so sometimes you need to take the time to address one and then the other, or just even coming to the realization that you're very vulnerable without having any way to combat or fight these instances. Like I couldn't address directly like my sleep or my anxiety randomly, or how I felt, or like ringing in your ears, like you said, you can't address it, you can't grasp it. And so just understanding that you're very vulnerable, but also addressing that vulnerability. Because at the end of the day, like I found now in the past handful of years, is that vulnerability has allowed me to grow as a person, as a father, as a man, as a student. I shared with class recently that on a Zoom call that like I am, as a man and as a father and as a former Marine, or I'm not vulnerable to anything ever, because I don't want to be. Like even on the road, you're like, you're not getting in here, that kind of stuff. But I'm totally 100% vulnerable to writing, and that's probably the only place. I don't talk to this stuff about my kids. Never been married. I don't burden my family with this stuff. And there's a tiny handful of people that know these things, but there's growth in that vulnerability. And now vulnerability has changed from understanding that I'm vulnerable to these symptoms and I have no control of them, or now I have, I guess, a little more control, but I'm finding growth in allowing myself to become, even vocalize things. Someone might say, hey, I try meditation. Have you tried meditation? Or I read this book. Have you read this book? But even vocalizing like I haven't been feeling good might just, even if it's someone you don't know, like I'm in line to get some pizza and I'm talking to my friend, like I haven't slept well last night. Someone behind me might say, well, I read a book about sleeping, but it's also me taking the step to vocalize that to someone might open something else to help me, and then again, you're just building relationships with my service dog. I've had for the past 5 years. Going to the same gym every day, about 6 days a week for 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years, seeing the same people that you just say hi to. And now we talk because Samson, one of the big things I talk about as service dogs, they advocate for, like, they're the bridge for us to get back into society and the world. But he's also created relationships at the gym that people I've seen that would never talk to, because sometimes you just don't talk to people at the gym. It's a weird place, or like guys don't talk about stuff at the gym. But just recognizing like someone has someone in the military, or they love dogs too, and then you just start talking to someone, and then instead of just giving the wave for 10 years, like you're like, oh, how was your son's birthday party? Like, how was your vacation to Hawaii? Because you get to know someone, and then you feel safer and stronger and more loving toward that place, because it's also building, like Frank said at school, is building another community where I know I can be safe here. And so it's not, you're not approaching the gym with this like tunnel vision of like, I hate everyone that looks at me. But I'm going to the gym like, oh, I want to find out how their vacation was, And so just finding those avenues to help yourself can really help you grow as a person and a father and as a brother and as a son,
Yeah, it makes the world more open to you. It makes it more accessible and positive, it sounds like, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you, Frank?
So, a lot of times guys don't want to, they come back with a lot of survival guilt also, and downplay a lot of their injuries. And like Emilio said, hey, I'm not as bad as that guy when he was on the plane. So I'm not gonna sit here and complain. I'm just gonna keep on going. And so you kind of downplay on your injuries and go. And meanwhile, your friends passed away or died over in combat, and you're worried about it. Your ankle hurts, or your brain hurts, or you got headaches, or you can't see, or and then you take a step back. What do I have to complain about? I'm alive. So a lot of the thing is that you need to embrace life in general, because not only sometimes are you hurting yourself, you're hurting your family members, the people that are around you, and to recognize a lot of those things is difficult. It's like the white elephant. They say the white elephant in the room. When I came home, it was very awkward. No one knew what to say to me. My coworkers didn't know what to say to me, and it was difficult, and they didn't want me to ask those tough questions. And so that went on for months and years, a matter of fact. And not until I opened my own shell was I able to go and talk to people and tell them about my service and tell them what I've done. I don't have stickers on my car. I don't have anything to advocate, say I'm a veteran. Maybe on Veterans Day I wear a t-shirt. But I had, like you say, Emilio said earlier, you have to advocate for yourself. And there's a lot of people that are going to advocate for you, but really it's up to you to do it for yourself and take those steps forward. And a lot of people go with the anhedonia, the lack of enjoyment of anything. It could be hanging out with friends or food or sex or any of those things that you had before, and now you don't have those things. You need to find a way to get back. What is it going to get? What is a way to get back there? And Emilio said you'd be in line somewhere and somebody will strike a conversation, and next thing you know, you're talking back and forth and bantering back and forth and opening up and being around a crowd again. And that's the hardest part, is taking those steps to get there and opening up. And because, like I say, no one wants to be vulnerable, especially this tough guys coming back from the military and doing tours and service, and we don't want to show that vulnerability because we're not supposed to. And the only thing we were allowed to do in combat was to throw the language out there, to throw that. We weren't able to express our feelings over there. There was only one expression that you do, and it was to drive on. But to learn to do that and express yourself, and in whatever way you do it, could be writing, could be cycling, could be running, or just talking to somebody. Those are the most important things that you need to realize for yourself.
Very good. And you mentioned something about, it made me think of, how does our community that you're coming home to as a, veteran, how do we make it more open and caring to, like, how do we become more engaged with veterans that are coming home?
I think, a lot of times I was uncomfortable. We would come home, they call us heroes, and, and they would, pay a lot of attention. And then you come up with the tough questions. People coming with the tough questions is, hey, what did you do over there? And they, what happened? Did you kill anybody? Did you do those things? And you get those questions sometimes. And then you yourself don't know how to answer yourself. It's like, you get angry. You kind of get angry. And so and if you have PTSD and a brain injury, it's much more worse. So you just it makes you withdraw it, and from yourself, because you don't want to face those things. But just listening to a veteran, veterans have a lot to say, but you need to give them the platform to say it. And that's the most important. And Dr. Elena Claw has done an excellent job for us with the veterans coming, because she's given us a platform, to talk if we want to. We don't have to. But my most important thing is I want to give back to the veterans that maybe have gone through what I'm going through, or what I've gone through. And if I can help somebody, and if I can give back, that's fulfilling to me. And it's important for programs like Dr. Lana Claw. And I encourage all the veterans that were coming through. I said, hey, have you heard of this class? Make sure you take this class before you leave this campus. Yeah.
Oh, that's really important.
Yeah.
And not asking some of those questions that I've heard people ask about, did you kill somebody? Or, I mean, that's kind of a really, we need to educate people not to ask those type of questions, I think.
Yes,
of people.
course.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's see here. We have another question that I'd like to ask you. So what do you know about what works best for coping with brain injury, particularly for student vets? What helps student vets cope with a recent traumatic brain injury, or if they're trying to recover from things and they have some symptoms going on? What helps them?
Emilio, I'll let you go on that one.
Sure. Thank you. One thing that I learned, and we had access to, I'm sure hopefully all campuses do, but even the simple fact of having your textbooks being turned into audio, sometimes focusing and thinking on words and the physicality of a book, the busyness of words on a page kind of stimulates your brain and your thinking process sometimes. So I found, like, listening to a book at the gym or riding or driving in the car, or maybe just hanging out at home while cleaning, it's easier to digest that way, instead of trying to, sitting down focusing is already causing like this tunnel vision type feeling. And then I find myself reading over words over and over again. And so something as simple as that, or like I said, the AEC on campus, you have the ability to, maybe you don't perform well at a test. I guess it's kind of a performance, some people just don't test well, but they're smart, and you feel really crunched in 2 hours, and your anxiety, instead of a 70, but that 2 hour test is like 100. And so the simple fact that knowing there's ways where you can fill this stuff out, go through this program on campus, and you can get 3 hours, or it's actually a time and a half you get to finish. And so you can even test outside of your class somewhere else, in another room, separately, another building. And just, there's places, sometimes I took it as, I didn't succeed and I'm a failure and I'm not going to succeed ever. But there's places where you can recognize I didn't succeed here. Okay, how can I better myself? What steps can I take to progressively move in this direction, instead of always falling back, and learning to just not bury yourself, because at the end of the day, college isn't like high school. Nobody cares if you go to class or not. And so you can easily say, like I did before, one semester I just kind of withdrew and I ended up getting 3 Fs, but I kept going to the writing class because I liked that, and I had a B+ or so. And then the other classes I just never failed, but I never approached my professor saying, this is what I'm having a problem with. And I wasn't even aware of the AEC yet. And so I just took that on the chin and I'll figure it out later. But then it dropped my GPA, it dropped my financial aid support. And then it made me have to reset a whole bunch of other things that if I would have addressed head on, wouldn't have been there. So understanding that I shared at a panel a couple years ago with Dr. Claw, that even the simple fact of a professor telling students, it's not me against you, or you as a student against me in university to see if you can get out of here in 4 years. It's me and you to try to work together to get you out of here in 4 years, or get you somewhere else, So even something like that simple might say, okay, I understand the open door policy. I'll go check it out, because confrontation isn't always good for us. And I want to avoid as much as I can, even positive confrontation. It's still confrontation, And so something as simple as that, and syllabus reading say, it's not me against you ever. Let's figure this out. I mean, they do that, but I don't know, maybe just wording it differently. But something as simple as that might open doors, not only just for veterans, but students in general, and understanding that it's not us against, we're not going to campus and we're fighting a war all day to avoid the noise, avoid the people, avoid the crowd, avoid the busyness in class, not talk. And then you get in your car at the end of the day and you're sweating for no reason, and you have this headache and you're anxiety ridden. And so just understanding the simple fact of driving to school one day, knowing that I'm going to succeed here with the help of people, not it's me against this campus every day. You know,
Yeah.
something with understanding that makes a big difference.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, that's really important. And I just wanted to make sure that people on the call today have a resource. So I'm going to share my screen again and share the back to school guide after traumatic brain injury. So this resource is a booklet that's available for PDF download. That's available to all veterans that are trying to get back to school. It helps you navigate campus life. It gives you resources from both the Department of Defense and the VA systems. Military One Source is also a great resource that's in this book, that's covered in this book. And it gives you like worksheets to do to make sure that you keep on schedule, keep on track with things. It gives you many different ways to get back into school and have success, because school is difficult for even civilians. So if you've had a brain injury or PTS, or you're trying to get back to school, this is great. So just wanted to share that with you. It's on our website. Also, I would just receive note that we need to end. So just wanted to make sure that you had our resources up. Let's see here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. You keep mentioning my name. I am a real person, Dr. Elena Claw. I'm a psychology professor at San Jose State. I direct our Center for Community Learning and Leadership. And over 10 years ago, I started the Veterans Embracing Transition Project when I saw that at that time, the needs of veterans were not being met at all on our campus. Nobody was talking about veterans or serving veterans full time. I'm pleased to report that since that time, we have many resources for veterans on our campus, including a full-time Veteran Resource Center, which is a one-stop shop for our military students to access their benefits and for dependents as well, and to access services. My project that was mentioned is Veterans Embracing Transition, and I'm particularly proud of the Vet Connect peer leaders. I have so much love for Frank and Emilio. I can't begin to describe it. My heart is absolutely bursting out of my chest with love for these guys. And I'm just so proud of what we've accomplished together. I really would urge those of you at San Jose State to access all of our resources, our VET project and the Vet Connect peer leaders, our Accessible Education Center, which was mentioned. It used to be called Disability Services Program. We now call it AEC, Accessible Education Center. So if you have a learning difference or a brain injury or any kind of impairment, you can access the accommodations that you need to succeed. We have a wonderful counseling services as well, and you can access many of our resources by connecting with our Veteran Resource Center. In addition, we do have crisis line references up, and we urge you that if you feel at all triggered, if this has brought things up to you, we want you to connect with the VA, to connect with crisis services, to go on to Military One as a website, and to be able to get what you need. If you're at San Jose State and you want to offer a program like this, we have a wonderful partnership, both through the Palo Alto VA, and thank you so much to Jessica HUCKABAY as a TBI specialist, as well as our San Jose Public Library system. And we are offering a series of programs that I had thought of while talking to my colleague Rosemary at the library, called Visits with a Vet. So we will continue to offer programs. Some might be specific for veterans and the military community, and some like this will aim to educate all of us, civilians, those who support military members, and veterans who feel passionately about wanting to stay connected and be part of these issues. So I did put my email. Claw is Klaw, like the Black Panther, like the villains, Dr. Claw. It's not with a C, although it sounds it. And if you want to get connected around these programs, please do contact me. Jessica, you're an incredible resource, and thank you so much for approaching me, for wanting to provide this information to the San Jose State community and beyond through our library system. I'm so appreciative of all of you, and thank you all for attending. We'll keep you posted about the recording.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.